Good evening and welcome to the Pompey Politics podcast, where we discuss matters of international, national, and local political importance in a calm, reasonable, measured, and even at times dignified way to get to the heart of the matter. I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'm Simon Sansbury, and I'm just trying to wonder where the dignified bit was.
Well, I think if we look at the calibre of guest we have this evening, what could be more dignified than Portsmouth City Council leader Steve Pitt? Good evening, Steve.
Hello, guys.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us.
Pleasure.
So, we didn't try to grab hold of you on the night because you were very, very busy and everyone was very, very tired, and it was 4 o'clock and gone in the morning. So thank you for finding time for us now. Ian, do you want to open up with the first question?
So I guess, Steve, to lead it in, undoubtedly a good night. At some point, people were predicting 10, even 14 wards potentially for reform. You won 8, they won 5. How did you manage it?
Well, I'm not sure that we ever actually agreed with those predictions that were being made. I think it's safe to say that wasn't.
Might not.
That certainly wasn't what our information was telling us from the vast number of conversations we were having with people on the doorsteps. Things were clearly moving in our direction very steadily during the short campaign. So no, we weren't shocked, and we expected to do very well on the night. And I expected us to still be running Portsmouth City Council. Obviously, it was a great result for us. To get overall control was the ultimate objective. And to achieve that is quite satisfying. But we're under no illusions as to why it happened. This election was, as all elections in the UK are actually, under first past the post. They're often a rejection of something as much as that they are an endorsement of something. So whilst our normal Lib Dem vote, people who normally support us in local elections, absolutely rock solid, turnout was up. And there was clearly a rejection of the alternative, and people understood that in this election it was going to be the Lib Dems or Reform running the city, and 2/3 of people who voted didn't want Reform. So that, in a nutshell, is what happened.
Do you see there is potentially now a sort of, I mean, there's always been an element of north-south divide. Do you think that division has got clearer over the last election?
Well, not so much. I mean, Reform had an incumbent in Nelson who was a former Lib Dem and who thought that his best chance of getting re-elected to Portsmouth City Council was to stand for Reform. I'll be really clear, purely to save his own backside, not because he actually supports Reform. Any suggestions you could be in the Liberal Democrats and then join Reform are just fanciful. And he was thumped out by the voters with a comfortable majority for Steve Andrews, who was a really great candidate. And in Baffin's ward, yes, it was quite close, but yep. Cllr scored the second highest vote of any Lib Dem in the city, second only to me, actually. And the highest vote any Lib Dems ever got in Baffin's ward outside of a general election year. So it's that polarisation of the vote in those two wards, both of which are in the north of the city, that saw those results happen. And in the other wards, well, they're not wards that we traditionally have done well in anyway. I mean, last time we won Cosham was 2012, and we haven't won any of the others in the last 15 years, 20 years. So I think it was, to some extent, a bit of business as usual. And our vote did significantly increase in the northern wards as well. But clearly, those wards have always led more towards the Conservatives. And on this occasion, people of that kind of persuasion decided that the Conservatives had no chance. And other than in Drayton and Farlington, where you'd expect Simon's incumbency after all these years to have had an impact, and it did, people switched to Reform in the same way they've been switching to Pitt in previous elections for the last few years.
Brilliant. Simon.
Yeah, congratulations on the result. You also massively increased your own majority in Milton, even though there were quite a few names on the ballot in Milton. Is that down to a similar picture, or is that how hardly you worked the ward and the personal support, do you think?
My own ward was very interesting this time. You'll be aware that there's been a campaign group who were opposed to the new leisure centre in Bransbury Park and wanted to, in inverted commas, save Eastney Pool, and are still campaigning to save Eastney Pool, even though we've already demolished it. Which put a colour on things, and they put a leaflet round and provided posters for people to put up, because they've been telling me all along that I was wrong, that people didn't support the project, and that they were going to boot me out at the election. Well, they didn't. They thoroughly endorsed what we'd been doing, as I said they would, because we knew from all the surveys that the council's conducted and our own doorstep voter contact that people did support the project. But obviously it made the campaign slightly more interesting. There was a smear letter put out by Reform, which clearly was written by George Madgwick. Jason Fazackley did not write that letter. I put money on it, to try and muddy the waters a bit. I had obviously a Green candidate against me who formerly stood for Labour and had a strong personal vote, and I think got the highest vote for the Greens in the city. And then, of course, Portsmouth's patriot, Perry Barter, decided that he would stand against me as an independent, got 34 votes. So it was an interesting campaign, but I think people coalesced around me as the stop the others candidate, and also endorsed me for the work that I've been doing to get a new leisure centre to serve the local community. I do work hard locally. I'm the community centre in Eastney and also the one in Milton, where we work with a joint trust to run both centres. I'm always there, literally 24 hours a day for Ali, the centre manager. She'll contact me any time of the day or night, and I'll get back to her. And I've got high visibility, and people know who I am. So I think a bit of a mixture of all of that. I'm incredibly grateful for the level of support that I got. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, I'll be honest with you guys, on the night, after verification, I was pretty sure that I was home and dried without an issue. I was more than concerned about what was happening with our other candidates, supporting the new ones and making sure the others got back. So I didn't really pay too much attention to the count itself. And it was only Councillor Winnington come up to me and said, "Have you seen how many votes you got?" And I said, "Well, no, I haven't actually." I thought I was fine, so I just went to check on everyone else. And he started doing a quick check, and he said, "You've got over 2,000 votes." So I was pretty shocked by that, to be honest, and I'm massively grateful to the residents of Milton for such a ringing endorsement.
Okay, so now that you've got a hard-won majority, I think first time since 2014, is that right? There's been a majority?
Since we lost it, it's the first time we've won an election with a majority since 2012. Yeah. We lost that majority on the UKIP surge in 2014. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So how does having a majority administration, how does that change how the administration operates? What difference does it make?
Not vastly. I mean, I was contacted by the other group leaders about chair positions and stuff, and I said largely it's BAU. We're not going to attempt to mark our own homework, so you should take the chairs of scrutiny. And my opening position will be, we'll back the status quo unless you guys go away and agree something else. And I believe that's what they may have done. So, but that's up to them to sort out. Other than that, it's always been the case that I've spoken to and discussed the budget with the other groups and accommodated what I thought we could within the confines of the funding available. We'll still talk to other people about what they would like to see in their wards next year, so that's not going to change. I think that the most important thing is that we've got that authority with LGR coming up, because that's really important. It's not me speaking, leading a minority administration in Portsmouth. It's me with a majority administration in Portsmouth. And actually, I do think that an element of that support that people lent us on the night was to do with what's going on with LGR. Our Hands Off Portsmouth campaigns resonated really, really strongly with people. It was coming back at us on the doorsteps throughout the short campaign leading up to a polling day. People don't want it. They don't like it. They think it's bad for the city. And they could clearly see that we were the people that were doing all of the running in opposing it with the government. I noticed since the election, others are piping up a little bit. Well, it's a bit late now. We've been fighting this for 18 months, and we'll continue to do so. And that majority helps with that for sure.
Okay.
I guess that leads us on to the next question, Steve, about priorities. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't ask about LGR. Do you see any realistic chance of stopping it? Obviously, the government has almost offered it out as a universal panacea, but with almost no explanation of how.
Exactly.
Where do you stand, and what comes next?
Well, it's such a moving. The whole thing has been a moving feast all the way through. You've got to remember we're now going to be on our third devolution minister since they announced all of this. And obviously, that minister also works across to the LGR stuff as well, and that ministerial post keeps changing. We've got Alison McGovern on the other side of things, who replaced Jim McMahon, and we've got Miata Fambulla's gone now. We've got a new minister coming in there. So since they launched this with no clear plan as to what it was going to deliver and why, other than some really vague stuff based on that County Council's Network report from 2020, which has since been debunked by the County Council's Network themselves. Funny that when they're not going to be whole county unitaries. The lack of clarity around what it all means and what the benefit has been pitiful, to be honest. That it's because it's a governance thing. I don't really think it's really cut through with the public in the way things like winter fuel have. But it is absolutely a dog's breakfast. They have no idea what they're doing with it. So we've been out to a KC and we've sought some advice. We're now trying to clarify a few bits of that further, because there's so many things that have changed during this process. It's difficult to know which particular bits of it you want to try and shoot holes in the most. But you'll have seen there as other councils also looking at legal challenges. I see that the reform in Essex Farage has been posturing about doing something as well. So, that this is, I think now the reality is coming home after post local election polling day. People are starting to wake up to the fact that this is now imminent, and are we going to be able to stop it? Well, the potential change of prime minister coming, is this really going to be a priority if that prime minister's Andy Burnham? If it was Angela Rayner, probably, because she was the deputy prime minister when all this was launched. But Wes Streeting, is he going to care about it? I don't know. So there's an awful lot still up in the air, but we've just got to keep making the case to say this is completely bonkers. It's fiscally incompetent, and you need to do something about it. I noticed that a response letter had just come through. I can't remember which council it came to, but I saw it on online over the weekend, when they were coming back and still claiming that the savings from collapsing the two-tier system are there, and ignoring the fact that as a unitary council, we've already made those flipping savings. They're not there to be made again. So there's so much incompetence riddled with this. Who knows where it's going to end up, but we're just going to keep pushing back as long as we can.
And I guess, Steve, there is an element of, it was a horrible night for Labour in Portsmouth. We lost some, whilst we may not be politically aligned with them, we lost some good councillors as part of that.
We did.
I guess there's an element of, would the cynic suggest that, potentially now that all of those big unitary authorities, there wouldn't be many red ones, that suddenly there might be some heel dragging going on?
Well, to be honest, they should have realised that earlier, because that was clearly going to be the case. And then look at our situation. We're in a majority control in Portsmouth. We actually came within an inch of winning Charles Dickens as well, and clearly wanted to make more progress next year. But if you look at what happened in Fareham, Gosport and Havant, it's a very, very different picture. So if we do become one council based on county divisions in those areas and our wards in Portsmouth, then as it stands, it'll be a Conservative Reform Council. So it's really important for us in Portsmouth that with 2/3 of the people saying that's actually what they really don't want, that we're pushing back hard against it. But I think maybe there'll be a bit of reality creep in now to look at some projections from their end as to what that might look like with all these all-up elections coming next year for those new shadow councils, and that actually they're literally turkeys voting for Christmas. It's going to be really, really hard for them. Although, ironically, of course, Reform now having not said much about LGR and have won a whole bunch of seats all over the place, and now starting to make a noise about LGR because they don't want to lose control of the councils they've just got control of. So, which is why my original statement that all of this should have been led through a royal commission around the future of local government and how it's organised would have taken all the heat out of all of that. But this is what happens when you've got a half-assed plan. You try to implement it in a half-assed way with rotating door of people in charge of it, and too many vested interests coming into play. They should have left the 9 unitaries that were in these areas being reorganised alone, and then they had a better argument because there's better savings to be made from collapsing the 2-tier areas. I still think it's in place in somewhere like Hampshire, it won't work without a significant government intervention financially, even then. But they would have at least removed themselves from some of the issues that they're going to be dealing with, where they're handing even more councils to the very people they don't want running them.
And I guess interestingly, Steve, for the next year, we were musing on just how many councillors and whether we think it's if you add kind of Portsmouth, Havant, Fareham, Gosport together, I think it's well over 100, possibly 150 councillors. Do you know whether they're all going to be gathered in one football-sized stadium this time next year, or
they definitely won't do this on the existing borough wards. I can't see any route to doing that, and certainly not if we were to retain 3 councillors per ward in Portsmouth. And I'll fight for that to the dying breath, because our residents need proper representation, especially in the wards where there's a lot of deprivation in areas like Charles Dickens and Paulsgrove. Yeah. They do need 3 councillors. No argument for reducing that to 2 at all. In fact, we were going through our boundary review with the Local Government Boundary Commission before all this started, and we would have had these elections based on those new boundaries, and those new boundaries for the wards would have still retained 3 councillors per ward. So we definitely want to do that. If that happens, then they'll use the county divisions as the building blocks for the rest of it, and there'll be an argument as to whether that gives us a council of just over 100 or a little bit more. But it won't be more than that. You'll have about 40% of the councillors from Portsmouth and about 60% from those surrounding areas.
Right. And so I guess if we just draw it back to Portsmouth, obviously this is going to be a fight that is going to take up an awful lot of your mental space and time over the next year. I guess if we look at kind of priorities for Portsmouth over the next 12 months until they throw it all up in the air.
Yeah, because we lose complete control, and I don't mean we completely lose control. I mean we lose complete control of our spending from about October time, after the structural change order's been laid. So any spending over $1 million on capital or 100,000 on revenue has to be cleared by our masters at MHCLG before we can actually spend it. So this is the last year where Portsmouth will actually control its own finances, and certainly the last budget we'll ever set. So in terms of priorities, as I've been saying for a while, what I'm trying to do with the cabinet and the rest of the group is look at what needs to get fixed now, so that we give it a bit of future proofing ahead of the reorganisation happening, because some of the things that we value, other councillors in Portsmouth value, and our residents value, will be on that chopping block if we're trying to make £67 million worth of savings. Things like community wardens, the standard of our parks, our events programme, all those sorts of things, our number of libraries that we've got, they'll all be up for the chop, because it's discretionary spending. And those are the things that our residents repeatedly tell us they value. So we're trying to do what we can to future-proof as much of that as possible over the next year. So that's certainly one key priority for me. The second is around maintaining support for people using that resilience fund that we've got from government, and our other resources that are available to us around continuing to support people with the cost of living, because it really is still a major problem for an awful lot of people, working class households in particular. The fact that you can have a mum and a dad out full time at work, and if they've got a couple of kids, they're really struggling. That's totally unacceptable in a first world country that's, part of the G7 or 8, whichever version of it you want, with Russia in or not. It just shouldn't be happening in modern Britain. So we need to keep pushing back on that. and we've got, projects that are already in train we need to see over the line. It's not going to be a period for many new initiatives because there just won't be the bandwidth for them. Officers are going to be pulled into working out how everything's going to fit together. It's going to take a vast amount of people's time. So it's very much a keep steering a steady course, see through the things that we've already set in train, and make the case when we are doing the merger that Portsmouth does things well, and therefore our model of doing things will champion to try and make sure that is the model that goes into the new council. And there's going to be a lot of education and learning to do for an awful lot of those councillors in the three boroughs. Not their fault, but they don't manage upper tier services at the moment. So the complexities around that, there's going to be a lot of learning to do, and it's going to be the Lib Dem team and our expertise and experience is going to have to sit alongside them and make sure they do understand how all this stuff works.
And I guess to that end, there's been quite a lot of churn, hasn't there, in those boroughs in terms of new people being returned to those county roles. Yeah. A lot of the quote unquote old hands, didn't fare very well at this particular election.
No, I mean, Fareham was fairly stable, to be honest. And I fully expect Simon to still be the leader of it after their annual council meeting, unless he's decided he doesn't want to continue. Despite the night changes, just because of the way that the seats that were up this year worked, we've still got probably a Labour, Lib Dem, Green working together in Havant. So that will give us some continuity there. But Gospel, a very significant change. So yes, there are some experience has been lost. Quite a few people did stand down as well because of the extra year and the fact that there was only going to be 2 more for Hampshire County Council. Lots of councillors decided to step aside who had lots of experience. So we're in a really challenging landscape, and shifting the conversation very slightly over towards Devo. If you look at the combined authority, which is going to be launching probably as soon as next month, there were 4 leaders there. At the moment, it's only certain that I'll still be there. The other 3 2 of them have definitely changed because they both lost their seats, which is unfortunate. And the other one we don't know yet. So, that's going to create more uncertainty as well. And it's important that people realise that the combined authority, the way these things are designed, will be expected to pick up some of the stuff that is currently delivered by other councils. And so if it's not functioning well, then that transition under LGR will be even more difficult.
So with the because quite often people kind of get the two things interchangeably confused, devolution and LGR.
They do.
But one thing that, because now is it still right that on the government's timeline that now the elected mayor won't actually be in place until after the shadow councillors have actually been elected, which are getting elected next year? The actual mayor doesn't get elected till 2028. Is that right?
That's right. It is, and they've made a mess of that as well. I think a lot of people thought that they'd push back the mayoral elections because they were concerned about winning them. I think pretty much, that there was some politics involved. Well, there weren't. There was a lot of incompetence involved. If you look at the government's red book, which is that's the Bible for government spending, you won't find in it the money for the devolution priority programme to fund that had already been promised. So they forgot to put it in. Which I know the previous minister, Miata Fambula, she didn't actually admit it, but she rolled her eyes when I said about it. So it's pretty clear to me that it was a complete balls up. So without the money, the only way they could not give us the money now, because they're contractually obliged to, they've written a letter of undertaking to say they would, was to push back the mayoral election because the money's tied to the mayor. So, and in doing so, they've shoved them back to May 28. So we've now got the ridiculous situation of all of the existing returning officers and election teams falling away on the 1st of April 2028, when the short campaign for the mayoral election has already started, and the new leaders of the new unitaries won't be able to say very much about anything because we'll be in the pre-election period. And the people who are needed to run the election will be trying to work out which office they're working out of because they've just been merged together. and you might end up with completely new returning officers. So the whole thing is an absolute calamitous mess, and we've pointed this out repeatedly to government, and all we get back from civil servants is the government said it's going to be May 2028. And we've explained, yes, but can you see what a mess this is? And all we get back is the government said it's going to be May 2028. Honestly, guys, these people are a nightmare to deal with. Absolute nightmare.
It
Yeah,
sounds
I
like
think
trying to build on shifting sands. Is it with if I mean does it give you more or less hope if Andy Burnham, for example, ends up being the eventual victor in the Labour leadership contest? That
I
they
think
put on hold.
TBC, I'm not sure what he's actually had to say about LGR. Obviously, he is a mayor, so he gets the devolution piece and he'll be supportive of that. He'll want that to work, I would think. What he thinks of local government reorganisation, I really don't know. I'd like to think that if nothing else, he'd put the whole thing on pause because it is such a mess. You know, I'm on calls where all of the chief executives across the whole of Hampshire are present with the leaders, and there's 15 of them. They're as exasperated by all of this as the politicians are, because their interactions with civil servants is that they just don't get the answers they need. So on every level, this is a bad thing. Where it'll end up, who knows? 5-6 weeks time, we might have a different prime minister who suddenly starts jettisoning loads of this stuff, and we might end up back into a status quo position. But if we do, I will be sending a bill to government for all the wasted time that has been spent on this. So either way, they're not getting off the hook as far as I'm concerned. They should never have done this in the first place.
And I think, Steve, that's a perfect place to leave it. So, thank you for giving us a chunk of your time. Obviously, I'm sure you're a busy man, and I know the pup is taking a fair chunk of your time at the minute. So, yeah, congratulations on an epic win. I think epic's fair. I didn't see it coming. I mean, Simon will allege that he did, but that's only because of his one-eyed Lib Dem leaning tendencies. Congratulations, Steve.
Thanks very much indeed. Nice to see you both.
Thanks, Steve.
Take care. Bye.
Take care. So,
well, winners and losers. You've won the prize, and if we go back to the Clouseau-esque, why is somebody from the government handing me a black orb with a sparkler in the top of it marked bomb?
yeah, it does. It seems even worse than a poison chalice, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's an atomic poo bomb, isn't it? And yeah, I guess we've reflected on the locals in some detail. I think it is the piece where the Labour have struggled, but in Portsmouth, I think the endorsement of the way the council's been run, you only ever see the negative online, but a positive outcome for Steve and his administration.
Yeah, to me, it's a sign of something's obviously working in Portsmouth. It's quite clearly an election where incumbents, or certainly incumbent administration's got a bit of a kicking. Portsmouth has certainly bucked the trend there, and also have the benefit of not now being distracted by the psychodrama of an internal election and leadership contest.
Well, yes, that brings us nicely on, doesn't it, to our friend SKS and the gentleman's not for resigning.
Well, it kind of seemed to be take aim, and no one's kind of pulling the starting pistol. It's it's a strange situation. It's a slow motion coup.
So I guess do we? I mean, there was an interesting discussion this morning about do you think Britain has become ungovernable? it was seen very much as a conservative thing to keep changing your leader every few months. But and neither of us are particular fans of SKS. But have we just got into this cycle of swipe left, don't like that one, try another one?
I think maybe we have. We've got kind of a little bit used to the drama of trying to run a country like it's a game show, and if someone does something a bit unpopular or isn't really exciting us or isn't really tickling us, then we decide to get rid of them. Having said that, the government have quite clearly made some kind of own goals. They've made some really poor policy decisions. Don't seem to kind of really be excited even their own voter base. But a lot of that is also, they might have a massive majority in Parliament, but did a lot of the people that voted for them in 2024, did they vote for them, or did they just vote to get rid of the Conservatives? And if that's the case, then is there any wonder that they're not happy with what they're doing now?
Yeah, and I guess I mean, that's always been the case, hasn't it? Is that if you look at we've looked at the numbers before, and the numbers were pretty much the same. You know, it is that kind of thing with first past the post, that they got pretty much the same number of votes as they did in 2019, got wiped out in 19, romped home in 24. So I think that's in play. I guess if we look at it, where do you stand, Simon? Do you think his position is untenable and he should resign, or do you think he's showing a bit of fortitude and leadership to be battling on and saying, well, bring it, and if someone brings it, I'll fight them?
If anything, actually, I think maybe this will be the making of him, in a sense of, this is kind of almost his John Major moment of essentially kind of the bastards need to put up or shut up. I'm paraphrasing him terribly.
Yeah.
But essentially kind of that was the thing. So it in that respect, you've got to kind of have some admiration for, well, I'm just going to carry on, rather, because the wrong thing for the country would be to say, oh, do you know what, just screw this, I'm done with this, someone else can kind of clear up this mess. So it's in that respect, that might feel, some people might feel that that's a tempting kind of way to go. That's not what he's doing. He's going through essentially kind of a slow motion competition that's not yet been started, that he knows is now exceedingly likely to happen, to replace him. But in the meantime, it's going to get on with the difficult kind of matter of the job. I don't know. There's a bit of me that, on one hand, like you said, with this kind of swipe left, swipe right, have we in the desperation to search for whoever we might believe is the perfect prime minister, and that's going to be a different thing to different people. Do we risk then actually discarding or discrediting actually people that, will there come a point that actually we look back on this and think, oh, do you know what, maybe actually we should have stuck where we were, because actually, after all of the drama before it, someone that is quite process driven, someone that is quite someone that is not with drama, someone that's quite a technocrat, that quite clearly is probably more of a managerial style. Is that maybe what the country needs at this point? But then, having said that, I also kind of feel, I can see that they don't seem to be winning the case that they're making, and then also seem to be tripping up over their own feet. So it's I don't know. Are they? Have we got people that are cosplaying as competent, or is it just actually that? Because even if they change the leader and we change the prime minister, the situation with the financial markets is still going to be the same. The situation with with all of the problems that the country is facing, they're not going to go away just because we change leader, are they?
No, and I guess if we look at our three runners and riders, or the obvious three, we've got Ange, haven't we? Her tax affairs are now sorted, but she simply can't win, because Labour just don't elect female leaders, do they?
I mean, maybe she will. Maybe the party will get. I mean, this is the other thing: is that the electorate at large, the voting public, aren't the selectorate in a leadership election.
No.
The members of a political party are, and members of political parties are always a bit, shall we say, slightly disconnected from how the rest of the general public are, in the sense of they're more committed. Obviously, they're more kind of politically active, and maybe that means that what they want isn't necessarily what the country as a whole wants. But I don't know that the country is settled on one view or not, or another.
No, and I guess I'm being slightly playful. Obviously, Ange does not the, the strange one for me is, oh, Wes. I can't do it without turning into the seagull
Is it
from
the Southwest Rail? Is that
so it
the?
is South
Oh,
Australia, yes.
Wes.
Oh, Wes.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing with Wes is that I think he's actually done a really bloody good job on health, and health is not an easy department to run.
Mm.
I mean, he's a strange career. I mean, he's a career politician, isn't he? His role was a student, National Union of Students, chair of the National Union of Students, into politics. So, kind of, you could argue he's never had a real job. But the bit for me, which I found very strange as his kind of opening salvo yesterday, Britain needs to rejoin the EU. That's quite a bold move early, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't saying now. He wasn't saying without there being a mandate to do it. But I think it's certainly a brave thing to say out loud. To be fair, he's not the first politician to be saying it. It's just we don't seem to be listening to some of the politicians, some of the people in Parliament that are saying it. There is a growing view that Brexit hasn't worked, and that a conversation needs to be started about to what degree to what degree do you fix that? Do you fix that by trying to ride two horses, which is the Starmer approach, which is the bespoke custom union and an agreement with the EU, or do you go all in?
Yeah, I guess that there are people in the middle, aren't there? There's ideologues on both sides, but for me, it 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 felt like a very bold move to potentially, again, I haven't, I read it a couple of times, and it did seem to me to be a very clear, one of almost his headline policy was to rejoin the EU. And no, he didn't set out a timetable, and he didn't do anything of that nature. But it did, it did strike me as quite well, very bold move if that's what he believes. And but potentially, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that that's going to get.
I mean, it's an interesting thing to bring up in this point in the conversation, in the sense of from a strategic point. To be fair, I don't think if you listen to this speech, and again I'm paraphrasing from memory. It was one day I want us to rejoin the European Union. So that's not saying if I'm elected leader, then that's what we're going to be doing. That's just saying, that's where I think actually, that's what he's saying, is that's where he thinks is the right direction of travel. And there's a case to be made. And the thing for me is, it's easy to say that, but will people be putting in the time to make the case and to win over the people that are concerned about that, or will that just basically literally just stick a rocket underneath and create a dividing line? If you think about some of the ex-Red Wall constituencies, how will that land? How will you make that case kind of land? That's all for that's all up in the air. So it could add a dimension to it, but it'll certainly be something decent, worth actually debating over and winning the case for, or not.
Well, and I guess it's that question of, is it worth debating, or does it just, in the game of divisive snakes and ladders, take you back to 2016 and all the shouting over and again? So I guess we've got Ange from the left of the Labour Party,
Mm.
we've got Wes from the right, but is it time for the coronation of the King of the North, Andy Burnham?
Well, I don't see. And this is the interesting thing where whether that's actually a strategic thing on Wes Streeting's part to kind of mention the Brexit angle. Because to be fair, Andy Burnham, I think, has previously said words to not words to the effect about, I don't think, about rejoining, but about kind of Brexit kind of harming, and how that's not delivered on the things that it was promised as. How difficult will it be for him to win in that constituency, because that constituency was heavily for Leave?
Well,
Will he be able to
yeah.
win over that case? It makes an easy attack line for Reform to do it. That you've got the whole kind of question about, will other progressive parties stand aside to make it easier for Labour to stand a candidate? And there'll be the argument of, well, should they? Because that's what we were speaking about before, about other places where there's a backroom deal, rather than actually allowing the voters to choose who they feel is the right person for them. And also, that also has the added dimension of, say, for example, the Greens and the Lib Dems stood aside in that constituency. Will Labour be returning the favour in other constituencies? Because I don't think they're allowed to, because I don't think their constitution allows them to do that. They need to stand in every parliamentary seat. So anyone who knows better of the Labour rules, then please correct us. But so in that situation, you start to get to the debate of, is it a sensible strategic move to start reopening the kind of the Brexit conversation? And you could argue that you're not reopening it. You're just saying, okay, let's kind of take stock. Is it
Well,
working? Is it part of the problem that's actually hurting people's cost of
well,
living? And if you can make the case and draw the dots between the two, then maybe there's a case to be made there that voters will agree with. Maybe not.
I guess if we look at it through the lens of Andy Burnham, it's really not helpful, is it? Because, as you say, Andy Burnham has made no secret of, he would have remained. He is, if we're going to tag people as leavers or remainers, he was clearly a remainer. But he's looking to stand in a seat where 65% of the voters voted to leave. And so I don't think Wes has helped him there, because,
No, the odds are certainly against him. But if he can make it work there, then
he'll make it.
essentially
He'll,
he's pretty much sewn up his case
oh,
for
that,
leadership. Because if he can make it work there, he can make it work anywhere, right? I guess is the
yeah.
point.
Well, and I get, well, it's that interesting piece, isn't it? Because if you look at the kind of council elections, a lot of those red wall seats went turquoise, in the same way that they lent Boris Johnson a vote to, quote unquote, get Brexit done. So I there's a bit of me, Simon, where I do worry about the Burnham effect, in that it feels like, it does feel like a coronation. It does feel like a personality politics.
Mm.
And I do think there's just an incredible arrogance and what disrespect of the electoral process to effectively, the Labour Party are, or think they are, handing him a seat.
I don't see. I mean, I don't think. I don't think they are. They're just obviously really, really hopeful. Or he certainly would be really, really
Yeah,
hopeful that kind of goes his way. But there's no such thing as a given. But they could be. I mean, funny.
but the
He's got to roll 2 hard sixes, hasn't he?
but
But
the
he could
lad
not.
Yeah, but the lad who was there was elected with a decent majority in
Mm,
2024, wasn't he?
yeah.
And I'm not sure, he was not looking to stand aside after 2 years. That was not his gig. So there is an element of, he thinks he might be doing it for the greater good, for Labour or for his mate. But I just think that, that element of, well, let's call a by-election, and if Burnham wins, obviously there'll have to be a mayoral election. I've seen estimates that say that those two together would cost the country about £5 million, which in the grand scheme of government budgets isn't enormous, but it's a heck of a move to make, to try and, for the Labour Party to quote unquote try and cure its internal battle. I've got a sneaking suspicion, Simon, that I don't think he'll win this one.
I think his chances of winning do you mean the parliamentary by-election?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think his chances are slim, but he's going all in, isn't he? You go big or you go home, I guess.
Yeah. But it will be a hell of a mess if he doesn't it? It's that the King of the North has been his train's been cancelled, and it's then a question of whether Ange or Wes or third party as yet unknown can then gather the number of backers to mount the challenge. And I guess
the interesting thing is talking. Had the NEC not made the decision that they made back in February?
Yep.
Then he would have stood there. Whether he would have won or not, obviously we'll never know. But we wouldn't be having we'd be having the leadership race now if it hadn't have already it might have already happened. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of weird in a sense of, it seems that the party have formed of a view that they don't want to have the race until all of the players are on the pitch.
Yeah, and I guess from a governing the country standpoint, it's not helpful, is it, if the Prime Minister has got to be keeping half an eye on those people sat behind him. And we didn't do because there was no PMQs this week, but I think Kemi got another few snippets in her highlights reel of battering the front bench for Labour almost en masse on Wednesday, and it's easy pickings for her over the next couple of months until Labour can make their decision and see whether there's going to be somebody else stood opposite her at PMQs by the time we get back.
Yeah. You could be it's not impossible at this point that Burnham doesn't win the by-election, so therefore isn't in the leadership contest, and therefore then the contest goes ahead, and then if, say, let's be honest, Streeting seems to be quite a divisive figure in the party. If he wins, how long will he be allowed before someone else tries to basically topple him?
Well, and I think Ange is beloved of the left, but has enough loose cannon about her that means that that one's not a given either, I don't think. So I think that probably, in what has been a turbulent spring for us, brings us to a nice pause point where we will now go and take a few weeks off to lay in a darkened room with a damp towel around our collective heads, and we will emerge back in the middle of June, ready to see. God, what else has happened? 3 weeks, long time, but
it just makes you grateful for how things are in Portsmouth, doesn't it?
Exactly that. Stability and all of that sort of thing. You've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And I've been Simon Sansbury. Please do make sure to remember to give us a like, follow, subscribe, comment, etc. Thank you very much for all the comments, but we'll see you on the 14th of June. We'll take that break and we'll see you then.
Don't forget to like, follow and comment on Facebook, or comment and subscribe on YouTube. Find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, X, YouTube, Threads, LinkedIn.